I think this is a common perception with entrepreneurs is we're such go-getters. We're like, I can do everything. I can learn everything. That's one thing that I had a big mental shift around, especially when it came to abundance. I was like, oh boy, there's only so much time in the day. There's only so much energy. There's only so much focus we can have. And we're better off, you guys, as entrepreneurs, to be doubling down on the skills that we love and that we're good at, and then leveraging our time by calling in people like Stacie and other experts to leverage their skills. And that's the difference, at least it was for me, of freeing up my time and energy to actually put my focus into my business instead of all the details, because it's not a necessity. This is actually the reason that I went looking for you guys, or just was wanting to manifest in my universe people like you, because my frustration with the first tax accountant I was working with, I remember I was really good about keeping track of all of my business write-offs. And I sent all of those in, and it didn't seem like many of them were accounted for when I, got my paperwork back, and I felt really discouraged thinking, wait, I thought that was part of this. And so that was financially painful enough for me to seek out additional guidance. And here's what's so cool about her team and what you guys offer. I think you guys still offer it. Is they were willing, before I even made a decision to switch, they offered to do, what is it called? Where you look at the previous submission, the previous year, and what is it called?
Yeah, it's just we review your taxes from the prior year and let you know if we see anything. And, and a lot of times we'll do that when people will be like, listen, I just don't feel like my taxes were right last year. And we're like, listen, just send it over. If there's anything that catches our eyes, like right off the bat, then, we'll let you know.
Yeah.
You wouldn't imagine some of the things that we've seen by doing that.
I could not believe the difference. I'll put it this way. I went from paying them a lot of money to actually getting a return. And it was shocking to me, because I felt like, as the entrepreneur, that I had done all the right things up until that point. But I ended up in a situation with a professional that, like I said, just wasn't motivated to do a little bit of the extra work. And it was such a light bulb moment for me of, oh my gosh, what a huge value to have somebody who's looking out for you. So when it comes to tax write-offs, and I know every industry is so completely different, but what are some categories or things that people can be thinking about that they can start tracking, so that when they reach out to you or to another professional, that they're prepared by keeping track of some of their business expenses and write-offs that they may not be currently?
Yeah, so I think, overall, if you're like, hey, I need this so I can continue to do my business, so I can grow my business or anything like that, that's automatically going to go into the tax write-off category, because it's going to be applicable to your business. You're like, listen, I need this to, grow my business, or I need this for, X, Y, and Z. I need this software just so I can do my daily tasks.
Yeah.
Very simple things like that. Then where you get into the conversation of people saying, hey, like there's these personal things that I pay for, but that I do use them for my business. And so that's where obviously there's this huge gray area. And I don't think I've seen accountants have similar opinions and everything like that, but nobody said the same exact answer
at all.
Anyway, no. And so, it's especially hard, when we're like, okay, hey, you should be doing this. They're like, well, I talked to this other professional and they said this. And we're like, listen, you're going to talk to about 10 more professionals and you're never going to get the same answer.
1,000%.
And then we just tell them, like, one, it's how much are you using it for your business? If you're like, listen, I put a desk in my, living room to have a home office, but I never work from home. And I'm going to be like, chances are we're not going to take that as a business expense. Like,
Yeah.
you can't just throw a desk and say, hey, I've got a business office at home. You got to
Right.
actually work from there and
Yeah.
produce, revenue and everything to justify that being there.
Mhm.
And there's like people who will be like, listen, my cell phone. I'm like, well, do you make business calls from it? Do you, work on like business emails or anything like that? Like, no, I use it. And I'm like, okay, cool. You cannot take that. Like, there's just simple things
Yeah.
of it has to be used for business at some, like, to start, writing it off and to start going into those deeper conversations.
Mhm. Yeah. So for my industry, which is a lot of on camera things, that was kind of where I got excited to find out that there was the opportunity for, beauty expenses and clothing and anything that does show up on camera or out in social media land. So that was really exciting for me to learn about. Is there, I guess, what would you recommend? Like, is there anywhere that somebody could go to look at what are all the possibilities for their industry? Or do you recommend that they just keep a running tab and then consult with somebody like you?
I would say just keep like a running tab and then consult with your tax professional. And then also understand, okay, hey, if I take this expense and the IRS comes back and they say not 100% of it was for business,
Mm-hmm.
or they write me, what are my options then? Because obviously
Okay.
you're going to end up having to pay taxes and stuff on that as well. And so just understanding like, hey, this one's like in that gray area. What would happen if the IRS was to come back and
Oh,
like
yeah.
not allow this?
Let's talk about that if you don't mind. I guess
Yeah.
what would happen?
Yeah. So what would happen would be that the IRS would write a nice little letter and it says audit and it scares everybody.
I'm sure.
And they're like, we're auditing X, Y, and Z. And we're like, okay. And we'll take uniforms, for example.
Okay.
Just because I see, sometimes where that one can be abused. And so it'll be people like, people who are in like the social media space or anything like that, who buy all of these clothes to do everything on camera, and they'll classify that as uniforms. Well, the IRS has a very strict code of your uniform is a protective gear that you cannot work without.
Interesting. Okay.
So then it's like, well, if you're doing a lot of on-camera work, that's promotion, that's advertising, that falls into a whole different category space for that expense. And so the IRS is going to disallow the uniform expense in that way. We can still take it. It's just named differently.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Yeah. So I hope you guys are catching this, that if you're trying to do this on your own or you're working with somebody that doesn't know the difference, these are significant changes to how you prepare. That's going to change your outcome. So hopefully you guys are starting to understand why I value Stacie and her team so much and why I will continue to, push this kind of education out there because unfortunately, it's not something I found as a resource. The more I think about it, a lot of the financial resources that I look at now are a little bit more high level, more so like, what do you do when you actually have money versus what do you do when you're just learning how to swim? So this is just so incredibly powerful. Anybody who's watching this episode, the fact that you lined up with this and that you're getting this information now before it hits you in a way that is not fun to deal with, it's pretty incredible.